I spoke to the woman, she's one of the radiologists. I think her name might have been Sarah. And she basically said that the reason they hadn't ordered it for it to be done with the CT is because they don't routinely. And she very kindly agreed to go through the images from what she'd seen. Not all the pelvic organs, she was just looking at, in this scan, the bladder, the uterus, the birth canal, and then when we spoke, she agreed to do she agreed for me to go back in to do some imaging with the contrast, and she widened the scope to brillium so that she could scan the episiotomy scars. She said she hadn't been made aware that I'd had an episiotomy, and she hadn't been made aware that that's something I had. She just didn't know anything about the episiotomy. So she said, yeah, of course we can scan the brillium to check for scarring and things. The most interesting part though was that she didn't see any sign of a polyp, at least not in the initial screening, which is fantastic, truly fantastic, but really surreal, because I know for a fact that it was in October 2024. It might even have been last October, to be honest. I can't be entirely sure. I think it might have been last October. But I went to St James's and then I did a TA ultrasound or an abdominal, and then they were already concerned about a polyp on my uterus, on my endometrial wall, and so then I was fast-tracked for a hysteroscopy, and booked in twice for a hysteroscopy, which is when a camera goes in and removes the polyp, or checks the polyp. So it's definitely there. 100% I had a polyp, 100%, because otherwise they wouldn't have referred me for a hysteroscopy. And then today she didn't see any sign of it. So, but that was before she did it with the contrast. And then I said, can you please, when you do it with the contrast, keep an eye out for this polyp? She said, yes, but what I need to do is I need to look at what is the gold standard for imaging of uterine polyps, because it may be that A, I don't know if that was a multi-parametric MRI or just a standard MRI, and B, I don't know if it was to check specifically for polyps, because there must be images that show polyps, right, 100%, but I don't know if that was the one that would, although I know MRIs are one of the most sensitive. So, especially with contrast, hopefully it would have shown up. But I think that the piperacillin must be working somewhat, because Dr. Paul thought it was for cystitis cystica, which would have shown up on the MRI as some kind of irritation on the bladder lining, and she didn't say she could see any sign of that. She said, when I was with her, she said that things looked okay, they looked fine, but that was before with the contrast, so it will just be interesting. I think they said that she went through it with me, and then she said that she had to dash to supervise somebody else, so I don't think she was going to be supervising the scanning itself, and I only went back in for another 10 minutes. But she's the one who's going to be writing the report up, so she's going to be writing that report up tonight, and then I think Dr. Kazan, I presume, will be going through that report with me tomorrow. So that will be good, and then I'm still waiting to have these swabs taken by Urogynae and Gynae, and the clinical opinion from gynae and urogynae. I would like to get a clinical opinion from them about all of this. About all of this.
Anything that Andy Burnham was doing with the media, where he didn't arrive with a well-informed newsline, and you go in as a journalist with an open mind, thinking like, I'm not necessarily going to take on newsline.
I did have the contrast where I'm sort of watching out the side effects and
but on many occasions that did end up
things like that. And then they also put the Buscopan through the cannula too, and I need to now find out when this is going to be removed, because I think it does increase your risk of infection the longer it's in.
He sort of developed a lot of those skills.
And then I think dinner will be soon, so
in Manchester, and I mean, you know,
yeah, I'm just going to sort of sit tight now and wait for further information about what's happening.
Held his showdown with the government over,
to be honest, with stuff like this, it's kind of like about ruling things out. So like if my symptoms continue, at least now with this MRI, with the blood panel, with the actual data that will be on my medical records, at least that means I can rule out certain things, narrow down what it could be caused by, which is really good. So it can sometimes be like frustrating when you feel like they're not immediately finding things that explain the issue, but at the same time it's also positive because it's ruling out serious like issues, you know, like tumours, and that's always good. So yeah, I'm just going to wait now.
And it looked very, very Westminster, very unbuttoned up, and there he was in his jacket, sort of almost sounding as though he was making it up as he was going along, although he wasn't quite, and it just completely tapped into the prevailing mood, and that's working at the North End.
Right, and would you say, well, perhaps people might say it also originally came from Game of Thrones, but I know why, you know,